Okay, so we're back here with another video for all of you fingerstyle guitar enthusiasts, and today I want to cover a topic that is talked about quite often in the guitar community, and that is the individual elements and techniques that make up one style. Now, after shows and after gigs, sometimes people come up to me and ask me specifically what I'm doing to get the sounds that I extract from my instrument. And it's easy enough to talk about this stuff and show people, but to talk about it in immaculate detail is another animal altogether. So today I'm going to try my darndest to try to explain at least a few different things that I do that people ask about. Now, there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of different techniques of fingerstyle techniques within solo guitar performance within this one genre, and it can be quite overwhelming. So, I think all of us would admit that all the way across the board we use the main ingredients, but there are different spices that you can select from the spice rack. And right now I'm going to show you a few of the spices that I use in my playing. Number one, percussive groove. What I mean by that is, I am a percussive player, a modern fingerstyle percussive player. I use percussion a lot in my playing, I'll admit that. But I don't go crazy like some of these guys, like Preston Reed and Thomas Lieb are just all over the place, kind of going, they use body percussion a lot. I don't do that too much. There might be a couple of songs where I do that, but not too much anymore. These days, I'm not using those techniques as much. Nothing wrong with it. I think that style is great. There are guys who could do it way better than I can, and some of these guys are pretty mind-blowing, but that's just not something that I found came natural to me. And yet, there are other guys who go to the other extreme, and for their only percussion effect, they just simply use a simple slap technique with the thumb against the strings, like this. And that's all they use, is that simple slap. Now, I kind of go in between all of that. I'm not so fancy as to be constantly doing this, and I'm not just doing this all the time. I go one step further. What I do is I incorporate my whole hand when I'm doing a percussive groove. So instead of just slapping against the strings, I do that in some songs, but in most songs, about 90% of the time, I'm using my whole hand to get the percussive groove. So it sounds more like this. And that's basically what I'm doing 90% of my songs. It's very simple. It's kind of a groove feel. It's nothing fancy. But what I'm doing is actually just, you can pick any fret, any chord you want. And all I'm doing is doing upstrokes with my thumb with eighth notes. So it's kind of like this. If I'm going to slow it down, I'm just doing upstrokes like that with my thumbnail. I'm using on the lower register of the guitar strings. And then I'm just adding my hand in with that. So when it's sped up, it sounds like this. Or so that's pretty the general gist of that. It's pretty simple. It's not too hard to do. It is harder actually to keep a groove than to do to figure out how to do that technique. It's pretty simple. Timing, that's a different thing. All of us have to work at timing. But okay, on to number two. And this is very simple. It's what I call string rakes, raking the strings with my fingernails. So basically I do kind of a backstroke, an upstroke, if I'm, especially during slower pieces where I'm going. also do downstrokes with my fingernail as well. So those are just what I call string rakes. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You're just using your thumbnail or your fingernail, the downstroke, near the bridge. So you get that really kind of spicy, shimmery dynamic to the music when you're playing. Okay, well, number three technique that I use is what's called fret muting or palm muting. So basically, when I'm doing that percussive groove, I don't go really between the frets, but I put my finger directly on the fret, so it kind of gives it a palm muting effect. Now that's one way to mute the strings when you're playing fingerstyle. Another way is just to use the traditional palm muting effect. When I'm sometimes on the intros to my songs, if I'm doing like an arpeggio, I'll kind of mute the strings a bit. So when I was younger, I started to notice over time that palm muting thing became part of my style very quickly, because I used to do that back when I played electric guitar. So it just kind of spilled over into my fingerstyle technique. So that's number three. And the last one, number four, is what I would call chord melodies. It's just a series of chords that kind of has a melody packed inside of it. So it kind of gives a Celtic feel, and you can get pretty crazy on some of this stuff. So basically all I'm doing is just playing a chord like a D chord, and then I take another finger, put it on a certain note, and then I pull off. So those basically are the four nuts and bolts, main ingredients that make up my signature style. And every artist has a signature style. So those are mine. Now, in future videos, I'm going to go into way more detail about harmonics, and there's all sorts of directions I can go with that. But those are the main, like I said, nuts and bolts of what makes it my technique and my individual sound. If you took all those four elements away, you'd have somebody else's style, not mine. So that's basically where I'm going with this video. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and that's all I have to really go into for today. But like I said, future videos will have go more into detail about what I do as far as technique wise, and just little hints and little nuances of how I extract some of these sounds. So hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in a different episode.